Hello and welcome to IPM Careers. Here we are going to discuss with you the most important portion on the concept of arithmetic. So in arithmetic, the different topics that you must be knowing are already there. They are percentages, equations, ratio, proportion, variation, successive percentages which can be percolated into the concept of profit and loss, markup and discount, and the concept of simple interest and compound interest. Okay, even people say that compound interest is nothing but successive percentage. Okay, so what is that? How is that related to each other? Arithmetic also has a component of averages, mixture, alligation, which uses the concept of what? Multiplying factor. Now, the concept of multiplying factor and the concept of change, these are said to be the most important topics in this particular unit of arithmetic, which would be forming a major portion of any competitive examination that you might be preparing for, right? Wherever quantitative aptitude is a part of. Now, what do we mean by change and how it is, used in different units and chapters? Okay, so there is an initial quantity and there is a final quantity. Okay, so whatever change happens from initial to final is said to be called the change. Now, who says that the change can only be positive in nature? It can also be negative in nature, right? So, if the initial quantity is less and the final quantity is more, then the change is positive. And if the initial quantity is more and the final quantity is less, then the change is negative. Now, this is what we call initial, change and final, right? Now, in this same concept, if I talk about what are the names of initial values in different units, okay? So, in the chapter of profit and loss, this initial is called the cost price. The amount that you invest on something is said to be the cost price, and that is the initial value. Okay, and the final value is the value at which the item has been taken away from you by some other purchaser. Okay, so that is why that is called the final thing that you can do with that particular item is sell that item. And when you have sold that item, that is the final destination or the final, the fate of that item for you. That is why the final value is equivalent to the selling price. The change here is called the profit. And as I said, that profit is the positive change and loss is a negative change. Okay, so plus change would be called profit here and minus change would be called loss here. Okay, so both of them can be the values here. Right? So this is the first thing that you should be knowing regarding the chapter of profit and loss. Then if I take up the concept of interest, in the unit of interest, what happens? Okay, the same initial quantity is now called what? Principal. The same final quantity is now called amount. Principal is the amount or the sum of money that you had with you. Okay, principal is also used and said to be the sum of money that you had with you is called principal. Okay, then you gave it to someone who promised to give you some extra money out of it, right? And the final amount of money that you got is called the amount. And the difference between these two is called the interest. Okay, now this is also called the concept of simple interest as well as compound interest, and based on this particular thing only, even the simple interest and compound interest formulas are derived. Okay, so in the concept of change, the first concept is called change, the second concept is called change percentage, and the third concept is called successive change percentage. Okay, and we'll talk about all of them in detail with you because they would form the foundation of all these chapters, right? Now, the third chapter where this particular thing or the continuation of profit loss chapter is called markup and discount chapter. Okay, now what happens in markup discount chapter? It is also an inclination towards the successive change thing. Okay, so there is a cost price which is the initial here. Okay, the change here is called profit, that is called selling price. Now this much portion happens for a regular, retailer or someone like that. But for big brands, what happened? For big brands, one thing is that they make something in their factory. Okay, then they mark it up. Okay, first they make a particular item, then they mark it up and start calling it the mark price. Okay, or the MRP, the maximum retail price, or the list price. These are all the names that are given to the, the mark price. Okay, then after the mark price, they do give some kind of discounts. And after the discounts, whatever is the price at which that item sells is called the selling price. Okay. Now, the net story does talk about this particular thing, that is cost price plus the profit is called selling price. But during this particular change from cost price to selling price, there are two other things which are happening, which is called markup as well as discount. And that is a definition of the chapter of markup and discount. Okay, so if I talk to you about it, what is markup? Now again the concept of change would be used here. Okay, let me tell you how. Now cost price plus markup is called mark price. In this particular transaction, this particular cost price is the initial quantity. This particular mark price is the final quantity. Let's imagine a factory is making a product of 300 rupees and it is marking it up by 500 rupees and putting a tag on it for 800 rupees. So this is what the things which are going on in the factory. Once that tag has been put and shipped to the different showrooms. Now, this was something which happened in the factory. So here, the initial, final and the change concept is used. Obviously, every particular factory would not build some particular item or make some particular item for 300 rupees and put a mark on it for 100 rupees. Obviously, they will not do that, right? Because they want to earn profit. So they will only mark it up. They will never listen to that value. And that is why only plus M is used here. Okay. Now, what happens here? Once this is happening in the factory. Now, when the same item goes into the showrooms, okay, in the showroom, what happens? Do the customers get to know what is the cost price of that item? Never, right? They only get to know the initial price, which is the mark price of that particular item, right? Then they do bargaining, or even the showrooms do offer some kind of discounts on, let's say, on the festival thing or something like that, or something other kind of sales that they offer. And thereby, they finally sell their particular product for some price. Okay. So, here the initial and final difference is called the discount. Right? And that is always in negative. The discount is always negative. And thereby this change would be a negative change. Okay. So, what happens in the showrooms and what happens in the factory are two different transactions. On the basis of this, this particular thing is called markup, and this particular thing is called discount. And the combination of these two is called the chapter name, markup and discount, right? So I just discussed with you one very small thing, and that was what is change. Now we'll try to jump into the second topic, which is called change percentage. Now, what is change percentage? Okay, change percentage is nothing but the change which happens with respect to always the initial value. Okay, always the initial value, and because it is percentage, into 100 is supposed to be done. So with the help of this particular foundation formula, which is going to be the foundation of profit and loss, interest, markup and discount, and data interpretation, when also this particular two words, and these three words actually I should say, are regularly used. Okay, so change percentage is nothing but change upon initial into 100. With the help of this particular formula, we can formulate every unit's formula, right? So in the chapter of profit and loss, what is it? Now the change is profit or loss. So profit of or loss percentage would be equivalent to what? Profit and loss percentage would be equivalent to the profit which happens, or the change which happens, which is the profit or loss, upon the initial. The initial of this particular change is the cost price into 100. Okay, so this is how you can formulate the first formula of profit and loss. Okay, so unit 1, formula number 1, right? In the concept of interest, okay, let me get back to you on the concept of interest, because with the help of interest formula, we will get to know the most famous kind of formula that has been being used since ages, and you have been using it since your class 4th or 5th, but you did not know how the formula was derived. I'll derive the formula for you. Okay, so please wait for that. Now, coming to markup and discount. Now, in what is happening in the factory? In the factory, the markup is happening. So what would be the change here? Markup. So markup percentage would be what? Markup percentage or the change percentage would be a change or the markup upon the initial with respect to that. The initial with respect to that is the cost price, and that is equals to into 100 is supposed to be done. वो तो करना ही है हमें एक तरीके से, है ना? अब हम बात करते हैं शोरूम में क्या होता है. What happens in the showroom? In the showroom, discount happens. Okay, so जब discount percentage होगा तो वहां पे क्या होगा? ठीक है, डिस्काउंट परसेंटेज में डिस्काउंट इज अ चेंज, तो यहाँ पे चेंज किसके करस्पॉन्डेंस है? डिस्काउंट के. तो फर्स्ट थिंग जो आपको लिखनी है वो है डिस्काउंट अपॉन इनिशियल. यहाँ पे इनिशियल क्या? व्हाट इज द इनिशियल हियर? द इनिशियल इज करस्पॉन्डिंग टू द मार्क प्राइस. सो मार्क प्राइस है into 100. So discount percentage is the next formula which is used here. Okay. So this is formula number 3, and this, my friends, is the formula number 2. ये है second formula, ये third formula, ये है मेरा first formula. Okay. So profit and loss, markup and discount के बारे में हमने काफी डिटेलिंग में बात करी. Okay. अब हम बात करेंगे regarding principal, interest and amount and how it is related to the concept of change percentage. Okay. बट ये बातें हम करेंगे in my next video, और एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट डिस्कशन हम लोग करेंगे in the next video, which is सक्सेसिव परसेंटेज. क्या 50% प्लस 50% डिस्काउंट का मतलब 100% डिस्काउंट होता है? तो इसका मतलब 50% प्लस 75% डिस्काउंट का मतलब आपसे शॉपकीपर बोलेगा सर आप हमारी चीज तो ले जाओ, 25% पैसे और ले जाओ हमारी तरफ से, क्योंकि 50 प्लस 75 तो 125 होता है ना, और 125% डिस्काउंट मतलब 25% पैसे भी ले जाओ. क्या ऐसा होगा या कुछ और होता है? एंड दैट इज द फाउंडेशन ऑफ the concept of successive percentage. So please wait for the next video जहां पे हम डिस्कस करेंगे आपके साथ दो बातें. पहली बात, सक्सेसिव परसेंटेज क्या होता है, 50% प्लस 50% डिस्काउंट, 50% प्लस 75% डिस्काउंट क्या होता है, और अगली बात हम आपके साथ डिस्कस करेंगे कि ये जो फॉर्मूला था इंटरेस्ट प्लस प्रिंसिपल इक्वल्स टू अमाउंट, उससे आप सिंपल इंटरेस्ट का जो सबसे पुराना फॉर्मूला है PRT अपॉन 100, क्या वो डिराइव कर सकते हो। ये मैं टास्क दे रहा हूं आप सभी लोगों को जो ये वीडियो देख रहे हैं कि बिफोर यू वॉच द नेक्स्ट वीडियो, ये फॉर्मूला सिंपल इंटरेस्ट इज इक्वल्स टू PRT अपॉन 100 जरा डिराइव करके दिखाइए, एंड यू सरप्राइज कि सिर्फ ये फॉर्मूला अप्लाई करके आप वो आंसर निकाल सकते हो। ओके, सो प्लीज वेट एंड वील डिस्कस this particular solution and this particular concept in my next video. Thank you.